The most powerful decision you'll ever make is the moment you decide nothing and nobody will ever hurt you again. Not because the world suddenly becomes kinder, but because you finally understood the fundamental truth. Your response is infinitely more important than whatever happens to you. Think about it. When was the last time someone's words cut through you like a knife? When did circumstances beyond your control last leave you feeling helpless? I want you to remember that feeling. Sit with it for a moment. Now ask yourself, who gave those words that power? Who decided those circumstances would determine my emotional state? You did. We all do. And that's actually incredible news. Years ago, I found myself at a crossroads. Everything around me had collapsed. Financially bankrupt, relationships in shambles, health deteriorating. I distinctly remember sitting at my kitchen table, bills piled high, wondering how things had gone so terribly wrong. It wasn't one big mistake, but 1,000 tiny surrenders. Each time I'd blamed circumstances. Each time I'd waited for conditions to improve. Each time I'd hoped someone else would solve my problems. I was surrendering my sovereignty. Have you ever noticed how some people crumble under the slightest criticism, while others stand resilient through devastating circumstances? What's the difference? It's not luck. It's not genetics. It's a decision about who governs your emotional state. The quality of your life isn't determined by what happens to you, but by how you interpret and respond to what happens. This isn't positive thinking. It's reality. When you truly understand this principle, everything changes. Not immediately in your circumstances, but immediately in your perception, which ultimately transforms your circumstances. Most people spend their entire lives as emotional reactors rather than creators. Something happens, they react. Someone criticizes, they defend. Opportunity disappears, they despair. Their emotional state is perpetually tethered to external conditions. They're living life as emotional servants, not sovereigns. Personal sovereignty begins with this truth. No one can make you feel anything without your permission. No circumstance can determine your worth unless you grant it that authority. Your emotional response is always your choice. I remember speaking with a gentleman who had lost everything in a natural disaster. His home, his possessions, even irreplaceable family heirlooms, gone. When I asked how he was managing, he said something I'll never forget. They can take my house, but they can't take my home. My home is what I build inside myself. That's sovereignty. What's fascinating is how this principle operates regardless of your awareness of it. Those who understand their response is their responsibility develop an internal locus of control. They don't waste energy blaming, complaining, or waiting. They immediately ask, what can I do with this? How can I use this? What's the opportunity here? Think of someone who's hurt you deeply. Perhaps they betrayed your trust or spoke words that still echo in your mind. Now consider this. Every time you replay that hurt, every time you allow it to affect your mood or decisions, you're giving that person continuing power over your life. Is that what you want? Of course not. But until you decide to take back your emotional sovereignty, that's exactly what happens. Personal sovereignty requires discipline. The discipline to between stimulus and response. The discipline to question your immediate emotional reactions. The discipline to choose your response rather than simply react. I found that asking better questions transforms emotional reactions. When someone criticizes you, instead of asking, why are they so wrong about me? Ask, is there any truth here I can learn from? When circumstances turn against you, rather than asking, why is this happening to me? Ask, how can I use this to grow stronger? One of the most powerful questions you can ask yourself is, what would the person I want to become do in this situation? This pulls you out of emotional reactivity and into intentional response. Your power isn't in controlling what happens to you. It's in controlling what happens in you. That's the essence of personal sovereignty. You cannot control the weather, but you can build a sturdy house. You cannot control others' actions, but you can master your responses. There's a remarkable freedom in this realization. Most people feel imprisoned by their circumstances. They're waiting for conditions to improve before they can be happy, successful, or fulfilled. But what if your fulfillment isn't dependent on conditions? What if you can create your experience, regardless of external factors? This isn't about denying reality. Pain is real. Loss is real. Difficulties are real. But suffering, the extended, amplified experience of pain, is optional. It comes from the story you attach to your pain, not the pain itself. I often ask people in my seminars, how many of you have been hurt by something someone said about you? Nearly every hand goes up. Then I ask, how many of you have been hurt by something someone thought about you, but never expressed. No hands. Why? Because thoughts have no power until they're communicated. And even then, they have only the power you give them. This principle applies to everything in your life. Your job doesn't determine your worth unless you decide it does. Your bank account doesn't determine your value unless you allow it to. Your relationship status doesn't define your completeness unless you surrender that authority. Personal sovereignty means establishing firm boundaries, not walls, but clear definitions of what you will and won't accept into your emotional space. It means developing the discipline to direct your attention rather than having it constantly hijacked by circumstances or others' opinions. Start building this sovereignty with small daily practices. When you wake up, decide what emotions you'll cultivate today rather than waiting to see what the day brings. Before entering any situation, set your intention for how you'll respond regardless of what occurs. When someone says something hurtful, before responding and ask, is this true? And even if partially true, how will I choose to use this information? Remember, emotional sovereignty isn't about suppressing feelings or pretending negative emotions don't exist. It's about owning them, examining them, learning from them, and then choosing what happens next. Most people allow their emotions to direct their actions, which then reinforces those same emotions. They feel afraid, so they avoid challenges, which reinforces their fear. They feel inadequate, so they don't attempt ambitious goals, which confirms their inadequacy. Break this cycle by acting from your chosen emotions rather than your automatic ones. The foundation of building your emotional fortress comes from understanding this principle. Nothing has meaning except the meaning you give it. A rejection can mean you're inadequate, or it can mean you're growing and stretching beyond your comfort zone. A setback can mean you're destined to fail, or it can mean you're gathering valuable data for your eventual success. The meaning isn't in the event, it's in your interpretation. Your interpretation becomes your reality. Change your interpretation, change your reality. Is this easy? No. Is it simple? Yes. The process is straightforward, but it requires consistent practice. I once worked with a woman who had endured tremendous childhood trauma. For decades, she carried those wounds, allowing them to define her identity and limit her possibility. During our work together, she made a profound discovery. While she couldn't change her past, she could change what that past meant. She could transform from victim to survivor to thriver by reinterpreting her experiences not as punishments but as preparation. Preparation that gave her unique strengths and insights to help others. That's the power of meaning making. When you control the meaning, you control the impact. When you control the impact, you control your destiny. Personal sovereignty also requires ruthless honesty about your current emotional habits. Most people have no idea how much of their emotional life runs on automatic programming, reactions they've developed over years without conscious choice. Start observing these patterns. When you feel hurt, what's your typical response? When you feel afraid, what do you automatically do? These patterns reveal where you've surrendered your sovereignty. This awareness isn't about self-judgment, but self-discovery. You can't change what you don't notice. Once you identify these patterns, you can begin inserting new choices at crucial moments. The quality of your life ultimately depends on the quality of your emotions. Which emotions do you cultivate most often? Which do you avoid? Most people accidentally reinforce negative emotional states through their focus and self-talk, then wonder why they feel chronically anxious, angry, or disappointed. Emotional mastery comes from understanding that emotions follow focus. Whatever you consistently focus on, you'll feel. Focus on what could go wrong. You'll feel anxious. Focus on what others might think. You'll feel insecure. Focus on past hurts. You'll feel resentful. Your focus is your choice, and therefore your emotions are your choice. This doesn't mean denying reality. It means directing your attention within reality. In any situation, there are countless aspects you could focus on. You choose which ones dominate your attention. Consider this practice for 1 week. At the end of each day, identify 3 things that could have upset you but that you chose not to let in. This builds your emotional immunity. Just as physical immunity doesn't mean never encountering germs but successfully defending against them, emotional immunity doesn't mean never experiencing negative events but successfully processing them without lasting damage. Your personal sovereignty develops through consistent small choices. Each time before reacting, each time you choose an empowering interpretation over a limiting one, Each time you focus on what you can control rather than what you can't, you're strengthening your emotional independence. Think of it like compound interest. Small deposits of emotional discipline made consistently over time create exponential returns in your quality of life. Most people want the end result without making these daily deposits. They want emotional freedom without emotional discipline. It doesn't work that way. The most valuable skill you can develop is the ability to observe your own thinking. Most people are so identified with their thoughts that they don't realize thinking is something they do, not something they are. When you can step back and witness your thinking, you gain the power to redirect it. This observer perspective is your command center. From here you can see thoughts and emotions arising without automatically believing or acting on them. This creates the space for choice. Practice this throughout your day. When an emotion arises, don't immediately identify with it. Instead, notice it. I'm experiencing anger rather than I am angry. This subtle distinction creates critical distance between you and the emotion, allowing you to respond rather than react. The stronger your observer perspective becomes, the less power external events have over your internal state. You develop what ancient philosophers called an inner citadel, a place within yourself that remains unaffected by fortune's winds. What's remarkable about this inner citadel is that it doesn't just protect you from negative influences, it also becomes the foundation from which you can create positive change in your world. From emotional sovereignty comes effective action. When you're not wasting energy on needless emotional reactions, you have tremendous resources available for meaningful creation. This is the paradox of personal power. The more you take responsibility for your internal state, regardless of external conditions, the more influence you develop over those very conditions. The person who can maintain clarity, focus, and determination, regardless of circumstances, becomes a force that circumstances eventually bend to. As we move forward, remember this fundamental truth. Nothing and nobody can hurt you without your participation. External events provide the stimulus, but you provide the response. In that response lies your freedom, your power, and ultimately your destiny. Once you've established that inner citadel, that space within yourself where external forces cannot penetrate without permission, your perspective on life's challenges transforms completely. You begin to recognize that life operates in predictable patterns, in seasons that come and go with absolute certainty. Have you noticed how nature never rushes yet everything gets accomplished? The oak tree doesn't stress about growing faster. The seasons don't apologize for their arrival or departure. There's a rhythm, a natural intelligence to it all. Your life follows similar patterns. Winter always precedes spring. Difficulties always precede growth. This isn't coincidence. It's law. Most people misinterpret their winters. They see hardship as punishment rather than preparation. They resist the very season designed to strengthen them for their coming harvest. I learned this principle while growing up around farmland. The farmers understood something profound about success that most modern people have forgotten. They knew that the harvest isn't just determined by their work ethic. It's determined by their alignment with natural laws and seasons. You cannot plant in winter and expect immediate growth. You cannot harvest what you haven't planted. You cannot rush what needs time to develop. When difficulties appear in your life, ask yourself, what season am I in? And what is this season teaching me? Winter teaches preparation and patience. Spring teaches action and faith. Summer teaches diligence and protection. Fall teaches gratitude and completion. Each has its purpose. Most people want constant summer, constant harvest and abundance, without understanding that perpetual summer would actually create desert conditions. The winter of your difficulties, your challenges, your setbacks, these aren't punishment. They're necessary seasons preparing you for growth that cannot occur any other way. Consider how strength develops in the human body. Muscles grow not during exercise, but during rest after they've been challenged beyond their comfort zone. The resistance itself doesn't make you stronger. It creates the conditions for strength to develop during recovery. Your emotional and mental resilience follow the same pattern. The challenges you face today aren't preventing your success. They're preparing you for a level of success that would destroy you without proper preparation. The question isn't whether you'll face difficult seasons. You will. The question is what you'll do with them. Most people waste their winters complaining about the cold. They waste their seasons of difficulty focusing on the discomfort rather than the development. Successful people understand that while you cannot control the season, you can control what you plant, how you prepare, and how you respond when the inevitable cycles come. I remember speaking with a business owner who had lost everything in an economic downturn. When we talked about his response to this winter season, he said something profound. I realized I couldn't control the economy, but I could control my activity. I couldn't dictate when opportunity would return, but I could prepare myself to recognize it. I couldn't prevent loss, but I could prevent loss of character. That's understanding the seasons. It's not about pretending winter isn't cold. It's about preparing properly, planting properly, and working properly, no matter what season you're in. It's about trusting the process even when results aren't immediately visible. Consider the farmer who plants in spring. For weeks, sometimes months, there's no visible evidence of his work. The seeds are germinating underground, invisible to observation. Many people abandon their goals during this germination period because they don't immediately see results. They plant in spring but give up before summer, never realizing how close they were to breakthrough. Your resilience through these inevitable seasons depends on your understanding of them. When you recognize that difficulties aren't random punishments, but predictable parts of a larger process, you respond differently. You stop asking why me and start asking what now. You stop seeking escape and start seeking growth. I've observed that people who struggle most with life's difficulties are often those who expected life to be consistently easy. They have no philosophy to make sense of challenges. Without this framework, every difficulty feels like a cosmic injustice, rather than a natural part of the human experience. Develop this philosophy. Everything happens for a reason, and that reason is to promote your growth. This doesn't mean everything is good, but it does mean everything can be used for good in your development. This single shift in perspective transforms your relationship with difficulties from victimhood to ownership. Most people want to avoid pain at all costs, but pain, properly understood, is simply feedback. Physical pain tells you something's wrong with your body. Emotional pain tells you something needs attention in your life. Financial pain reveals flaws in your economic habits. The pain itself isn't the problem. It's what you do with it that matters. Think of the last major challenge you faced. Looking back, can you identify ways it forced growth that wouldn't have occurred otherwise? Did it reveal character flaws you needed to address? Did it develop resilience you now rely on? Did it clarify your priorities in ways comfort never could? This isn't about minimizing genuine hardship. It's about maximizing what you extract from it. Gold must go through fire to be purified. Iron must endure the forge to become steel. Your character and capabilities develop through similar processes. The question isn't whether you'll face fire, you will. The question is what that fire will produce in you. Will it embitter you or better you? Will it make you weaker or stronger? The difference isn't in the intensity of the fire, but in your interpretation of its purpose. Here's a powerful practice. Whenever you face a significant challenge, immediately ask, what strengths will this difficulty develop in me if I respond properly? This question redirects your focus from the problem itself to the potential within it. It transforms your role from victim to student. Years ago, I faced financial devastation that seemed overwhelming. During that season, I started filling a notebook with every lesson I was learning through the experience. That notebook became more valuable than the money I lost, because the principles I discovered have generated far more wealth than what disappeared. Without that winter season, those lessons might never have been learned. Most people miss the lessons within their difficulties because they're too busy resenting the difficulties themselves. They're so focused on escaping the season that they miss its purpose. Remember, the season will change whether you learn from it or not, but you determine what you carry forward. Your resilience isn't built during easy times. It's forged in challenges that test your limits and force growth. Each difficulty you face properly becomes part of your foundation rather than part of your destruction. The same fire that melts butter hardens steel. The difference isn't in the fire but in the substance. What substance are you made of? How do you respond when expectations aren't met? When people disappoint you? When circumstances turn against you? These responses reveal the quality of your character far more than your behavior during comfortable seasons. This understanding transforms how you view your past difficulties as well. Maybe you've experienced tremendous hurt. Perhaps you've endured situations no one should have to face. You can't change those experiences, but you can change what they mean and what they produce in your life going forward. I've met remarkable people who have transformed unimaginable hardships into extraordinary contributions, not despite their difficulties, but because of how they processed them. They didn't just survive their winters. They learned to extract every possible nutrient from the frozen ground. They transformed their deepest wounds into their greatest strengths. You can do the same. You can decide that nothing in your past has the power to diminish your future unless you give it that power. Your history can be either a burden that anchors you to pain or a foundation that supports your growth. The difference isn't in what happened, but in what meaning you assign to it. This resilience comes from understanding a fundamental truth. Circumstances reveal you. They don't define you. When pressure comes, and it will come, it simply reveals what's already inside. Pressure doesn't create character, it exposes it. This means your response to difficulty isn't just about managing the current situation, it's about developing the internal qualities that will determine how you handle every future challenge. Most people focus entirely on changing their circumstances while neglecting the development of their character. They fail to recognize that improved circumstances without improved character simply creates a cycle of repeated problems. The person who wins the lottery but lacks financial wisdom will soon return to poverty. The person who finds the perfect relationship but lacks relationship skills will soon recreate familiar problems. Your character is the root, your circumstances are the fruit. Focus on developing the root, and the fruit will eventually follow. This development happens primarily during your winter seasons, your times of challenge and difficulty. These seasons reveal gaps in your character that comfort never could. They show you where you need growth, where your foundation is weak, where your thinking is flawed. Most people resent this exposure. Successful people welcome it, knowing that you can't fix what you can't see. They understand that temporary discomfort leads to permanent improvement if you extract the lesson. There's a distinction between learning about something and learning from something. Most people learn about their difficulties. They gather information about what happened, who's responsible, why it's unfair. Successful people learn from their difficulties. They extract principles, develop new capabilities, build greater resilience. Think about the most significant challenges you faced. Did you simply go through them or did you grow through them? The difference determines whether that experience becomes a stepping stone or a stumbling block in your life story. This growth requires honest self-evaluation. Most people never truly examine why they face repeated difficulties. They blame circumstances, other people, bad luck, everything except the one factor they can actually control themselves. The patterns in your life reveal the principles you're violating, knowingly or unknowingly. If you consistently experience the same relationship problems with different people, that's not about them, it's about you. If you repeatedly face financial crises despite earning good money, that's not about economics. It's about your financial habits. If you're constantly overwhelmed despite working hard, that's not about your schedule. It's about your systems and boundaries. These patterns aren't punishments. They're feedback. They reveal where you need growth, where your thinking or behavior is misaligned with reality. When you recognize these patterns and take responsibility for them, you transform from victim to creator. You stop being punished by principles you don't understand and start being rewarded by principles you align with. Most people want different results without different thinking. They want different harvests without different planting. It doesn't work that way. Your current conditions are the direct result of your previous choices, which were directed by your previous thinking. New results require new thinking, which produces new choices, which creates new conditions. Resilience comes from this understanding. You stop seeing yourself as helpless against circumstances and start seeing yourself as the primary creative force in your life. Not in a way that denies reality, but in a way that takes full responsibility for your response to reality. This responsibility is actually the foundation of hope. If your life is primarily determined by external factors beyond your control, there's little reason for hope when those factors turn against you. But if your life is primarily determined by your responses, which you can control, hope remains available regardless of external conditions. I've observed that the most resilient people maintain this internal locus of control, even in the most challenging circumstances. They focus relentlessly on what they can influence, rather than what they can't. They understand that power doesn't come from controlling everything, but from taking absolute ownership of their responses to anything. Consider how plants respond to environmental stress. When conditions become harsh, drought, extreme temperatures, poor soil, they don't complain or give up. They adapt. They send roots deeper. They develop new characteristics specifically because of the stress. Without that stress, these adaptations would never emerge. You have the same capacity. The constraints and challenges in your life can either break you or cause you to develop strengths that comfortable conditions never would. The choice isn't in whether you face these challenges, but in how you respond to them. Most people never develop their full potential because they avoid the very conditions that would force that development. They choose comfort over growth, security over possibility. They fail to understand that meaningful achievement always requires temporary discomfort. The seasons of your life will continue to cycle whether you understand them or not. Winter will come regardless of your preparation. Spring will follow regardless of your belief. The question is whether you'll align yourself with these natural patterns or resist them to your detriment. Alignment means preparing in summer for winter's challenges. It means planting in spring despite not seeing immediate results. It means protecting your developing harvest from threats and distractions. It means harvesting with gratitude rather than entitlement. Each season has its tasks, its challenges, and its opportunities. Your resilience through these inevitable cycles comes from this alignment. You stop fighting natural processes and start working with them. You develop the wisdom to recognize which season you're in and what that season requires. You build the patience to trust the process when results aren't immediately visible. Remember this truth: everything valuable takes time to develop. Your character, your capabilities, your achievements all follow natural growth patterns that cannot be rushed, but can be optimized. When you understand this, you stop resenting the time required and start using it purposefully. As we continue, consider how this understanding of seasons applies to your current situation. Are you in winter, facing challenges that seem overwhelming? Are you in spring, planting seeds of new possibilities? Are you in summer, nurturing growth that's already begun? Are you in fall, harvesting the results of previous efforts? Identify your season honestly, then ask what this season requires of you. Winter requires preparation and patience. Spring requires faith and action. Summer requires diligence and protection. Fall requires gratitude and completion. Each has its purpose in the larger story of your development. Understanding these seasons of life prepares you for the most crucial aspect of personal transformation: disciplined action. Because here's the uncomfortable truth: knowing about these principles without applying them is the same as not knowing them at all. Knowledge without action isn't power. It's merely potential. The gap between knowing and doing is where most dreams die. How many books have you read, seminars you've attended, ideas you've collected, and yet has your life transformed in proportion to this knowledge? For most people, the answer is no. They know enough to completely transform their lives, but they don't do enough. This gap exists because of a fundamental misunderstanding about success. Most people believe success is an event, something that happens to you once and changes everything. But success isn't an event, it's a process. It's the accumulation of thousands of correct decisions, consistently made over time. It's daily disciplines compounded into extraordinary results. Look at any area where you've achieved something meaningful. Did it happen overnight, or was it the result of consistent actions taken day after day? Your health, your relationships, your skills, your finances, all reflect not what you do occasionally, but what you do consistently. The power of consistency is dramatically underestimated in our culture, which celebrates overnight success while ignoring the years of disciplined effort that created it. We see the athlete's championship moment, but not the thousands of practice hours. We see the business's explosive growth, but not the years of careful foundation building. We see the overnight success that was actually a decade in the making. This misunderstanding creates an expectation gap that leads to disappointment, which leads to abandoned efforts. When immediate results don't appear, most people give up, never realizing that they've simply misunderstood the timeline of success. Success is sequential, not simultaneous. You don't achieve everything at once. You achieve things one after another by focusing on the right priorities in the right order. Most people try to change everything at once, which guarantees they'll change nothing permanently. If you were to watch a construction crew build a house, you'd observe a very specific sequence. They don't start with the roof or the interior design. They start with the foundation, the part that's least visible but most important. Then they frame the walls, add the roof, and only then work on the cosmetic elements. Your life works the same way. Build your foundation first, your philosophy, your character, your daily disciplines. Everything else stands on this foundation. Skip this step, and whatever you build will eventually collapse, no matter how impressive it initially appears. The foundation of lasting success is systematic, disciplined action. Not bursts of motivation followed by neglect, but steady, consistent progress. Small disciplines, repeated daily, in an area of your life you've decided to change. When I meet someone who tells me they want to transform their life, I ask them about their daily routine. Show me your schedule, and I'll show you your priorities. Show me your daily habits, and I'll show you your future. Most people don't realize they're designing their future life through today's routine. Why do daily disciplines matter so much? Because of the principle of compound effect. Just as money compounds in an investment account, daily habits compound in your life. The effects aren't noticeable in the short term, which is why most people abandon good habits before they produce visible results. But over time, the difference becomes exponential. Think about two people who are identical in every way, except one has a daily discipline, the other doesn't. The difference between them after a day is negligible. After a week, it's still hardly noticeable. After a month, maybe a slight difference appears. But after a year, 5 years, 10 years, the gap becomes so vast it's hard to believe they started in the same place. This is why seemingly small choices matter so enormously. It's not the individual choice. It's what that choice becomes when compounded over time. The decision to read 10 pages daily doesn't transform you today, but after a year, you've read 3,650 pages, the equivalent of 12 Mitchell 15 books that your alternative self never experienced. The decision to save a small amount daily may seem insignificant, but with proper investment and time, it creates financial freedom that your alternative self will never know. The decision to invest in your relationships daily creates a reservoir of goodwill and support that your alternative self will desperately need but never have. Most people dramatically overestimate what they can accomplish in a day and dramatically underestimate what they can accomplish in a year of consistent effort. They want immediate transformation rather than daily improvement. But immediate transformation rarely lasts, while daily improvement, compounded over time, creates sustainable success. Let me ask you, what daily disciplines have you established in your life? Not what you do when you feel motivated, but what you do regardless of feeling. These disciplines define your destiny far more than your occasional inspired efforts. The challenge is that discipline requires delayed gratification, the ability to sacrifice what you want now for what you want most. In a culture built around immediate satisfaction, this skill has become increasingly rare and increasingly valuable. The people who can delay gratification consistently will eventually lap everyone who can't. How do you develop this ability? By starting small. Don't try to completely overhaul your life overnight. Begin with one daily discipline that you commit to practicing, regardless of convenience, mood, or circumstances. Master that before adding another. I once worked with a man who had repeatedly failed at establishing consistent exercise. When we examined his approach, I discovered he was trying to go from no exercise to 60-minute workouts 5 days a week. No wonder he failed. Instead, we started with 5 minutes daily, an amount so small it eliminated all excuses. Once that became habitual, we gradually increased the duration. The principle applies to any area. Start small, build consistency, then increase intensity. It's better to read 10 pages every day than to read 100 pages once a week. It's better to save a small amount consistently than to attempt dramatic financial changes that prove unsustainable. This approach addresses one of the greatest enemies of disciplined action, perfectionism. Perfectionism isn't about having high standards. It's about having unrealistic expectations about the path to meeting those standards. Perfectionists typically believe that unless they can do something ideally, they shouldn't do it at all. This all-or-nothing thinking guarantees they'll accomplish far less than those who embrace imperfect progress. Progress isn't made in giant leaps. It's made in small steps, taken daily. The question isn't whether you can do something perfectly. It's whether you can do it consistently. Consistency trumps intensity every time. Another enemy of disciplined action is what I call the motivation myth. The belief that successful people feel motivated all the time. And if you're not feeling motivated, you should wait until you do. This misunderstanding has probably killed more potential than any other. Successful people don't feel motivated all the time. They've simply learned to act despite not feeling motivated. They understand that action often precedes motivation, not the other way around. They don't wait to feel good to do what needs doing. They do what needs doing, which then makes them feel good. Think about it. Have you ever noticed how once you start a task you've been procrastinating on, your energy for it often increases? The hardest part is usually beginning. This reveals a powerful truth. Motivation isn't something you wait for. It's something you create through action. This brings us to another critical aspect of disciplined action: managing your emotional state. Your ability to take consistent action depends largely on your ability to manage how you feel. Most people let their emotions dictate their actions, which guarantees inconsistency because emotions naturally fluctuate. Instead, develop the skill of acting from commitment rather than feeling. When you decide in advance what you'll do regardless of emotional state, you become vastly more consistent and therefore more successful. This doesn't mean ignoring emotions. It means not letting them control your actions. One of the most effective ways to manage your emotional state is through your physiology. How you move, breathe, and hold your body dramatically affects how you feel. Notice how your posture changes when you feel confident versus defeated. Practice intentionally adjusting your physiology to support the emotional state you want, rather than reinforcing the one you're trying to overcome. Your focus also powerfully influences your emotional state. Whatever you focus on expands in your awareness. Focus on problems, and they grow larger. Focus on possibilities, and they become more accessible. This isn't about denial. It's about directing your attention strategically toward what empowers rather than what limits. These tools, managing your physiology and focus, give you tremendous control over your emotional state, which in turn affects your ability to take disciplined action consistently. Master these and you'll develop a level of personal consistency that sets you apart from 95% of people. But consistency alone isn't enough. You must be consistently doing the right things, activities that actually move you toward your goals, rather than just keeping you busy. Many people confuse activity with accomplishment, motion with progress. They stay busy without getting results. This happens because they haven't clarified what matters most. Without clear priorities, everything seems equally important, which guarantees you'll spend time on low-value activities. Disciplined action isn't just about doing things consistently. It's about consistently doing the right things. Identify the 20% of activities that produce 80% of your desired results. These high-leverage activities should receive the majority of your focus and your best energy. Everything else should be minimized, delegated, or eliminated. This principle, focusing on the vital few rather than the trivial many, transforms effectiveness more than almost any other strategy. In your professional life, what are the one or two activities that genuinely drive your success? In your health, what few behaviors make the biggest difference? In your relationships, what specific actions strengthen your connections most? Identify these high-leverage activities and build your daily disciplines around them. Most people spread themselves too thin, trying to improve everything at once, and ultimately improving nothing. They fail to understand that success doesn't come from doing 4,000 things pretty well. It comes from doing 12 things exceptionally well. Focus creates power. Another crucial element of disciplined action is creating environments that support your goals rather than sabotage them. Your environment, physical, social, and digital, exerts tremendous influence on your behavior, often subconsciously. Restructure these environments to make good decisions easier and poor decisions harder. If you're trying to eat healthier, remove temptations from your home rather than relying on willpower. If you're building a reading habit, create a comfortable reading space with your book open and waiting. If you're developing a new business, structure your mornings to work on it before distractions arise. Your social environment may be even more influential. The 5 people you spend the most time with shape your standards, your beliefs, and ultimately your results. Are these people lifting you toward your potential or anchoring you to mediocrity? This isn't about judging others. It's about honestly assessing whether your social circle supports the person you're becoming. These environmental factors matter because disciplined action isn't primarily about willpower. It's about creating systems that make success almost automatic. Willpower is a limited resource that depletes with use. Systems conserve willpower by reducing the number of decisions required and by structuring your environment to support desired behaviors. Consider how top performers in any field use systems to maintain consistency. Athletes have training schedules and nutrition plans. Writers have daily word count targets. Investors have asset allocation strategies. These systems remove the need to decide whether and how to take action. They simply execute the predetermined plan. What systems have you created to support your most important goals? Have you structured your environment, your schedule, your triggers, and rewards to make disciplined action the path of least resistance? If not, you're making success unnecessarily difficult. The ultimate purpose of these disciplines isn't restriction but freedom. Many people resist discipline because they associate it with limitation. But true discipline, doing what needs to be done whether you feel like it or not, is actually the only path to true freedom. Financial discipline leads to financial freedom. Health discipline leads to physical freedom. Relationship discipline leads to emotional freedom. The temporary restrictions of discipline create permanent expansions of possibility. This understanding transforms how you view difficult actions. They're not punishments, they're investments. Every time you do what's difficult but necessary, you're investing in your future self. Every time you choose what's easy but unproductive, you're stealing from your future self. Which are you doing more often? Are you investing in your future through disciplined action today, or are you borrowing against tomorrow for momentary comfort? The quality of your future depends on your answer to this question. As we conclude, remember this: nothing and nobody will ever hurt you again when you take full ownership of your responses, understand the seasons of growth, and commit to the daily disciplines that transform potential into reality. You become truly invulnerable, not by controlling external circumstances, but by mastering your internal world. Your freedom isn't found in avoiding challenges, but in developing the strength to meet them purposefully. It isn't found in perfect conditions, but in your perfect response to imperfect conditions. It isn't found in what happens to you, but in what happens through you. Starting today, commit to one small discipline that moves you toward your most important goal. Practice it daily, regardless of convenience or mood. Watch for the compound effect to begin working in your favor. Then add another discipline, and another, building systematic success through consistent action. Remember, what you do today determines who you become tomorrow. Your current actions are creating your future self. What future are you creating right now? And if you don't like the answer, what will you change today? The power to create an extraordinary life exists within you right now. Not in some distant future when conditions improve, but today, through the seemingly small choices that compound into remarkable results. Your destiny isn't determined by what happens to you, but by what happens in you and through you. As a result of disciplined, purposeful action, start now. Start small. Start where you are, but start.